It's time for Fully Threaded Radio.
It is Fully Threaded Radio, voice of the FCH Sourcing Network. This is Eric Dudas, along with JavaScript Master and Muskie Fisherman Extraordinaire, Mr. Brian Musker. Brian, how are you?
Hi, I'm really well, thanks.
This is episode number 3, and we are recording the week of April 12th, 2010. This episode will be uploaded to the fullythreaded.com website on April 15th. We received feedback of all kinds from episode 2, and we'll get to that in a minute. One of the interesting things that came from that was an invitation to cover the NFDA Spring Conference. They're having some international panel discussions, and we'll be heading out there very soon to provide coverage for future Fully Threaded episodes. Let's run down today's show. I think you'll find it a very, very good one, up to usual Fully Threaded standards. We'll begin with a conversation with Rob Lucas of Fidelis Fasteners. Rob has returned from China, and he'll give us a rundown on what he saw out there, including a review of the Hangzhou Fastener Show. He'll also talk about the new ad that's come out in American Fastener Journal that describes the Fidelis Fastener direction. And we'll also get a preview of the Columbus Fastener Show presentation that he'll be making later in May. We'll also be talking with Matt Traylor of Madison Fasteners. He's out of Hanover, Indiana, and he's got an operation that actually is fairly diverse, and we'll talk to him a little bit about how operating in different areas has helped him to function in today's economy. Then we'll talk with our friend Jay Mont from American Imperial and Discount Screws. He operates out of Pomona, New York, and we'll have a very, very telling conversation with Mr. Mont. Brian, how's it going? How have you been since the last episode?
I've been working away. We've been receiving uploads and stuff. I've been processing it. It's caused a couple of little new additions we've had to put into our scrubber to deal with a couple of different abbreviations. And so it's been a typical week of adding more and more content to FCH and making sure people can keep finding it.
Reports from across the industry were that March was indeed a very vigorous month, and we saw that reflected in our searching. We had a little bit of a dip at the beginning of April, but here it is mid-month, and we're seeing a real surge at this point. It's turning out to be a very good month. I mentioned that we had some interesting feedback from the last show, and one of the things that we saw was numerous searches that came through from listeners who apparently heard your discussion on the ASME standards. And did you see some of that searching going on, Brian?
Yeah, I did actually, and we'll elaborate on a little bit of that a bit later. Point that we hope people picked up was that our scrubber detects the numbers B18. I mean, those are used only for these ANSI and ASME numbers. And so most people don't actually put the word ANSI into their description. So if you put that in and try and search for it, then you won't really find much. I mean, it could be ASME, could be ANSI, could be none of those actually. And the search engines themselves look especially just for the numbers, the B18.2.3 or whatever they happen to be.
I know you've spent a lot of time over the last week, as you always do, describing the importance of including DIN numbers for a lot of our metric members, and it seems like that would be a smart thing to cover in an upcoming segment as well.
Yes, I'd really like to go back and do that. I mean, the DIN numbers are a little different to the ANSI numbers in that you could probably say that in terms of the US Imperial fasteners sold in the US, most comply with the ANSI or ASME standards. That's not necessarily the case in the world of metrics. You can have a socket head cap screw that does not comply with one of the DIN standards. And so, whereas it's a bit of a luxury and certainly helps track people or attract people to find your fasteners if they're US Imperial ones. In the world of metric, you are signifying that this is a special fastener. Okay. Having said that, given the fact that the real number of metric fasteners sold in the US is quite small, we clearly attract huge numbers of people searching for these standard metric fasteners, because our members who have their inventory listed, which is metric stuff, metric inventory, they receive a lot of activity, and we would think it's out of proportion to what it should be, given the fact that really is a small segment of the fastener industry in the United States.
11 or 12%, isn't that about right?
Yeah, about 11%. But and we have numerous companies who target that 11%. But they certainly, the activity relating to searches for standards using, be it either DIN or ISO, and DIN is far more popular standard usage than ISO. Those people benefit dramatically from having their, paying attention when they're loading their fasteners up and putting these standard numbers in.
We're talking, of course, about the world-renowned FastenersClearinghouse.com search engine, which you can access at www.fastenersclearinghouse.com, and just click on the search for fasteners link and you'll get in there. There's about 520,000 line items currently, and it's free to use, free to search and source. You can always contact us at the email address ftr@fullythreaded.com, and also check out our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/fullythreaded.
Oh, and I would note that we now have a link on the Fully Threaded Radio where you can click the link and it will automatically or lead you through to adding the Fully Threaded podcast to your iTunes, so that you can put it on iPod or your iPhone and listen to it when you're in the traffic getting to work.
That's a great development. Our show today really covers the industry. We've got a distributor who is also a manufacturer, and we've got an import agent. And this covers the East Coast, the center of the country, as well as an outfit that really circles the globe. And I think that we're filling our mission here, Brian.
Yep, it's a good lineup.
Getting outside of the world, I was noticing on the website globalfastenernews.com the other day, they have a free page where you can go and kind of look at an interesting highlight of the day, and they had a story about a problem they were having at the International Space Station getting a bolt undone, I guess it was, and it really brought the whole thing home. No matter where you are, you're always going to have a potential problem with a bolt. There's always a hang-up, right, Brian?
Right, and the reality is that the National Aeronautics and Space Administration had to deal with this issue really a long time ago, because they realized you can't just sit out in space and crank on a wrench, because for the equal and opposite reaction thing, you'd fly off into space. So they had to develop a special wrench that had its torque completely enclosed so that you could put it on a bolt and it would undo the nut without making the astronaut fly off.
Do they have WD-40 in space, Bri?
I don't know, and I don't think it relates to and it was a very expensive thing to develop, I think, which probably gives rise to the stories about $1 million toilet seats, but it happened to be very, very, very important and useful.
Well, with that, let's get to our first segment where we'll hear from Mr. Rob Lucas. And he hasn't been quite so far, but he has spent some time in China recently, and I know we'll get a little bit of update on that. Let's play that clip now. We're joined once again with Rob Lucas of Fidelis Fasteners. This time, Rob, you are stateside. Welcome back to Fully Threaded.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Appreciate it.
Last time we spoke with you, of course, you were reporting in from Shanghai, China on a trip over there, and you were with Larry Thomas, your partner. Curious, since we did speak last, seems like not too much has changed other than you see the prices going up as forecast. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. It's a price increase environment right now. You've got some issues with freight we can talk about, but as far as costs go, costs have gone up I expect them to go up again later this year, probably as soon as next quarter. That has caused some pain or duress for the vendors overseas. Surprisingly, the message I got out of being over there this last trip was, our typical workflow and what we usually do. But when I'm seeing some of the vendors that I had met, they were all under the impression that overall the U.S. demand has picked up. Now, when you come back to the States and you talk to individual customers, they may not see it in the same light. However, when you're a vendor in China and you're looking at an entire nation versus a regional area, I think they're seeing the demand escalate. And I think that's a good sign. As far as huge demand, I think it's not massive, but I think it's a glimmer of hope. Along with that is steel increases. China is much, much more different than most anywhere else, where they pay for their wire up front. At time of delivery, if the price has gone up, they have to add in that cost. So it's much more difficult to lock in prices in China because of they don't secure tons and tons of wire. And I think that another portion of it that's of some interest is people in most instances, vendors in most instances, have relatively reduced slightly or in some cases greatly the amount of raw material that they hold because demand was so poor for the last 18, 20 months. So they're not buying as much as they have. So as this demand increases, they don't have that material on hand, hence they have to go buy it. And then you've got the steel mills who have added these price increases. So that's going to probably play a factor in the next 8 to 10 months.
We were hearing so much in the fourth quarter and even the first quarter of this year about overcapacity in China, and now that seems to have really vanished from the headlines. What were you seeing over there with that theme?
Well, I don't know if it's diminished itself. I mean, China has got a massive infrastructure build. The things that you see there, each time I go, and I go, 5, 6, 7 times a year, each time I go, you see something new or they're building something new. They have got so much going on internally that it's keeping most of the factories, busy with domestic sales. However, they're not at a state where they're working 3 shifts and they've got, full capacity taken out. I think there is still plenty of capacity. I don't necessarily know if I'd call it an overcapacity, but there's plenty of ability to secure product from overseas. They still are looking, very, very strongly to U.S. demand. They still want to get, a bigger portion or a bigger share of that market. And I think that'll go on for quite some time. I just don't think that the economy is spiked up so much, if at all. Not so much domestically for them, but from an export standpoint, that they can say, hey, we're okay. There's plenty of capacity.
Rob, you and Larry were at the Hangzhou show at the end of March, and can you comment on that? What was the theme of the show, and what was the atmosphere like?
Yeah, we went to the Hangzhou Fastener show, which is a relatively decent-sized vendor fastener show where you see a lot of manufacturers in China that came to kind of show their wares. The theme was most of that show, to be honest with you, was more of I would say a regional show or a local show. They were dealing with a lot more domestic sales. I did not see a lot of foreigners. A handful of Europeans and 2 or maybe 3 domestic U.S. guys were actually at that show, less us. I saw quite a few vendors, spoke to a lot of people. We talked to a couple of the Chinese fastener technology fastener magazines to give them our feedback. Same message. They saw some demand picking up, but a lot of those people at the Hangzhou Fastener Show are not, or a very small portion of them are selling to the States. So they were kind of, focused in on us and, hey, what can we do? So the message I got out of it was, hey, a lot of good factories there, a lot of shady factories there, but out of the good ones that we saw, they're looking for business. They want to grow their model. I noticed that a lot of the vendors had expanded their product lines. I don't know if that's indicative of a bad demand or if they're just looking to find other ways to grow their personal business. So it seemed that, a guy who made nuts had expanded his nut line, not only from finished nuts, now he's going into Kep's nuts and Acorn nuts, et cetera. And it was kind of interesting to see that. We saw quite a bit of stainless steel too. I don't know if that's because this particular show has a focus on that or not, but there were more than I normally see at fastener shows. There were quite a bit of people that had some fairly big booths that were representing stainless. So of course we picked up a few vendors to go and audit and see, and maybe something will come out of that. But I think the real show is the best show for us and for informational standpoint is going to be this Shanghai Fastener show that's in mid-June, which I'll be attending. That's going to be a much, much larger show. It's got some automotive ties to it. It's got some really, really big factories, and I think it's going to draw a lot more vendors. I would say that the Hangzhou Fastener show probably had 50 or 60 vendors, and I think the Shanghai show is going to triple that.
Right, I've been reading about that, and it looks a little bit bigger. I'm curious, though, regarding the exhibitors at Hangzhou. You mentioned that it was primarily Chinese companies. What about the attendees? Was that a good mix, or was that also primarily Chinese attendees?
Well, that's what I was referring to. The actual exhibitors were all Chinese. It was all Chinese factories, and only factories. A handful of your usual trading companies, and some that suggested they made parts, and you could just talk to them and tell that they were trading companies. The attendants were where I saw a handful of European people, and when I say handful, literally one handful, maybe 5 or 6.
I see.
And I saw 2 or 3 domestic U.S. guys. One that I knew, the other 2 I knew were there, and I saw their business cards around. So there wasn't a whole lot of hit to that. And I think it's, again, you're not seeing a lot of travel from the States because the economy is so bad that people are just holding off on those kind of costs as far as travel goes. I would imagine you see it a little differently in the Shanghai show. I bet you'll see a heck of a lot more European folks and probably quite a few more U.S. folks. I would tend to say, though, you'll see more Europeans than you will U.S. There's just not a whole lot of domestic U.S. travel being spent, the dollars being spent to head over to China to investigate in the bad economy.
Got it. Not a big surprise there, I suppose.
Right. I wasn't expecting to see that. Again, I saw a couple of distributors there from the States. I saw a couple of guys who had, basically a rep business over there, and that was it from the States. I saw a handful of end users from Europe. I talked to one guy. They were out, kind of scouring this area, and I would imagine, and from the perception I got out of it, they were probably brought there by a vendor for some reason, or some type of a rep agency, because I could see them being toted around by some Chinese nationals.
Let's switch gears now and talk about the new ad that you have in American Fastener Journal. I'm reading a link off of your website, actually, at fidelisfasteners.com, and there's a PDF reprint of your ad there. It is describing your business with distributors only, and I'm curious what inspired this ad.
Well, a couple things. One was we had a suggestion from a friend of ours who said, a long time ago in these fastener magazines that someone had once put out a one-sentence kind of a statement and then signed it. So we said, hey, what a good idea. Let's personalize this and let people know that we're real and let them know exactly what we do. The other portion of it was we have began to see over the last few months end users and OEMs contacting us, and that's not our forte, and we don't really want to play in that arena. Our arena is really to support the distribution model in the States and help them facilitate and grow their business. We're not set up or wired to deal with end users. And what I'm doing now is if end users are hearing this or interested, they can give us a call and we'll refer them to a distributor that we work with in order to get them some type of relationship where there's an inventory managed system, and we'll get them the lowest possible price we can and keep their costs down, which again is going to be more attractive than the traditional means it has been in the past. So it really wasn't anything. I got a couple people called and said, hey, did you do something wrong? It had nothing to do with us being called out for doing any kind of business on the logo or on the slide with an end user. We just wanted to let people know that, hey, we're here to support the distribution model. That's been what's built us. That's what's going to grow us, and we're going to continue to support those guys the best way we can. And we wanted to let them know that our word is our word. Anybody that knows us will know that, and we're going to stick to our game plan.
That's interesting and understandable. This is, of course, a subject that we're continuously facing and trying to describe with fastenersclearinghouse.com, and we've got a variety of things to say on it, and I hope that we'll actually, on Fully Threaded, be able to address a little more clearly in the near future, but it's interesting to have your perspective on that.
Yeah, I also, to give you guys a little bit of a self-serving plug, we talk about Fasteners Clearinghouse quite a bit with our customer base because there is, although Fidelis and Fasteners Clearinghouse really don't have a true business together because we don't hold inventory, and that's really your forte and how you manage inventory. We have promoted you to distributors because I think there's a value there with them. Most, I would say all, not even most, all distributors have some type of inventory that they either need to publish and get out into the arena so that they can move it, or they've got to sit on it. And I think you're a much more beneficial instrument for them because it's almost as live as you can get data for their customer base. So, just so you guys know, and for the world to know, the relationship between where we sit is we kind of are partnered up, for both self-serving reasons. But I think it makes a really true and good standpoint to the market on what you do and what we do and how they both fit together.
And there are more comments like that you've made on the YouTube channel, which can be found at www.youtube.com/fullythreaded. And speaking of shameless plugs, the NIFS East is coming up May 25th and 26th in Columbus, and you are one of the headliners. What's on tap for that? How are you getting set up for that, Rob?
Well, we're going to have an hour-long seminar. Hopefully we can keep it to an hour on how to deal with China. You can't really verbalize it in a sentence to let people know exactly what that means. But, over the years of being with master importers and with manufacturers and being a fastener geek for life, there's a lot of people who are either have dealt with China and have been burnt, or they're unsure of it, or they don't even know how to get there and what China sees of them. So I thought, hey, there's a message here for people in the States to see, at least understand a little bit about. I don't know how detailed I can get into it today without blowing my whole wad for the show, but we want to get the distributors to understand a little bit better on how China perceives the U.S. market and what it takes to really do business with them, above and beyond, price shopping and looking on the internet. So the intent is to talk to whomever attends this seminar, explain to them the best practices about how to go about finding vendors in China, how to secure and protect yourselves when you do that, what kind of freight and shipping implications are involved in that, how currencies are involved, how costs are involved, how to build relationships with these guys. And that's, Fidelis has been promoting that since the get-go. That's our whole business, is building relationships with vendors overseas. And we want to start to paint that out in a broader scope so that people understand. And I think it'll benefit them. It'll give them a much more clearer understanding of how business is done over there and how it's treated. So it's kind of great, but it's kind of not. I'm hoping to see more questions out of this because I'm sure people have, looming thoughts in their heads about how or what they want to do that maybe we can help them communicate to. From doing this for so damn long, we have a pretty good idea of what you should and shouldn't do in China. We've seen some tremendous mistakes by others. We've made a few. We've learned how to do things the right way. We know how to manipulate the system. We know where to go and what to go. We want to kind of pass that along.
Well, that sounds like a very, very valuable seminar that you're going to give, and certainly spot on for this economy.
I hope so.
I'll see you there, and appreciate you joining us again on Fully Threaded Radio.
Hey, I'm looking forward to talking to you again before I split out again to the Shanghai Fastener Show.
I'm sure of it, and we'll talk soon. Thanks for joining us, and this is Fully Threaded Radio.
FastenersClearinghouse.com. Search and source from over 500,000 line items, or just a mouse click away and available at no charge. When the need arises, you won't find a better place to locate hard-to-find fastener inventory. It's where you need to be.
This is Joe Truckee of Cal Fasteners, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for us.
This is Robert Wanzer, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for American Imperial.
This is Andy Pell from ScrewCrew.com, and FCH works for the fastener industry.
Join the sourcing network now and show your inventory to a whole new market. Turn slow movers into cash. List up to 10,000 line items. Show them to distributors only or to the world. FastenersClearinghouse.com. It's where you need to be.
Murray with Untitled Fasteners, your source for VMI on the West Coast. You're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
Fully Threaded. I wonder when we'll get Fasteners Clearinghouse out to China to attend one of the shows, Bri. What do you think?
Well, we're waiting for our airline tickets to turn up.
I wonder if there's little enclaves of U.S. guys, and the whole section of the show kind of reeks of hot dogs.
I'm not sure. I doubt it.
But listening to Rob describe the ad that they have in the American Fastener Journal, this issue, it raises a very salient point for FastenersClearinghouse.com users, and one that we really probably also need to touch on, and that is the distributors-only nature of the network.
Right, and I think that's probably been misunderstood, or at least possibly we have not been able to impart that knowledge very well. But the Fasteners Clearinghouse has really had the ability for a member to decide whether they want their inventory to be seen by everyone in the world or only by people who are distributors once they've logged into the system.
Well, that's true. And one of the things that we did some time back was we tried to segregate FCH, or the FCH community, really into two parts. Part one is the FastenersClearinghouse.com database and search engine that most people are familiar with. And that is open to anyone basically with a computer and an internet connection. And a lot of folks think that's the extent of Fasteners Clearinghouse. But in fact, again, some time back, we developed what we call the FCH sourcing network. And that is an area that is secure and accessible only by fastener distributors. And we put it out there, and we started to develop it to satisfy that part of the market that requires distributor to distributor only. I don't know if you'd call it confidentiality, but the fact is you need to be a vetted fastener distributor to get in there.
Yes, now there's some, it's actually a little more complicated than we originally envisaged, but we have some members who have inventory they've loaded up with us, and that inventory they quite happy to show that and sell it to anyone else who finds it. There are other people who are not allowed to show certain inventory, quite often it's brand name inventory, to anyone but other fastener distributors. And so we came to the view that was for our purposes, or for Fasteners Clearinghouse, it's best dealt with on a warehouse by warehouse basis, so that you could have one location that you define where your inventory can be shown to everyone, and you have another location that you can set up which contains those things that you really are contractually only able to offer to other distributors.
It's true, and we really are shooting to serve or to satisfy both parts of the market. It's clear that there is a pretty big demand out there for the FastenersClearinghouse.com side, but we also know that there's a pretty big demand for the FCH sourcing network side, which is distributors only, and that part is really gone kind of, as of yet, underdeveloped, and we're really going to start to make a push at that, and I hope that folks will keep their eyes open in the near future for some of the things that we're doing. Incidentally, if any users are current FCH members and you'd like to take advantage of this, in other words, you've got some of your slow movers online and on the FastenersClearinghouse.com database, and you want to get the whole line card up there on the sourcing side, get with us and we'll work with you on that right away.
Right. And remember, there's another aspect to this distributor only, which is that some of our larger member companies who are master distributors and can only sell to other distributors, they may list items with Fasteners Clearinghouse which are no longer in their own sales manuals, so that quite often for some people the items can be found only on Fasteners Clearinghouse because they're no longer in price books from the master distributors.
That's true, and we also have numerous companies that operate on the fastenersclearinghouse.com site, and they only do business with other distributors.
Right.
Well, the next couple of guests that we've got on the show, I guess, represent both sides, don't they? Because coming up first, we've got Matt Traylor with Madison Fastener, and he is actually also a manufacturer. So I guess he's kind of an OEM, a manufacturer, and a distributor all wrapped up in one, as we'll hear. And then in the following segment, we'll talk with Jay Mont, who is the consummate fastener distributor. So let's play the conversation we had with Matt and get the perspective of a distributor who's also involved in industrial supply and manufacturing. We're talking now with Matt Traylor from Madison Fastener. Matt, welcome to Fully Threaded Radio.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You are operating a company in Hanover, Indiana, and the way that we first started talking really was you'd put an inquiry through the Fasteners Clearinghouse system, and we got to talking related to that, and really we swerved into a subject that we've been talking a lot about, which is dealing with the current economy. And your operation is actually kind of a threefold thing, and I hope you'll tell us a little bit about it. You're a fastener distributor, but you're also a metal fabricator, and you've got a plastic operation going. Tell us a little bit about that, and please, if you could, start off, just tell us how you got into this. What's your background?
Absolutely. I started in the industrial supply world about 6 or 7 years ago and started working for a national supplier and worked at a few different locations for a few different markets and tied to a few different job titles. But wanted to get in it as an owner and own my own business and all the positives and negatives that come with that. So opened a sales agency, was tied to FAS Plastics and Hanover Machine and Tool. And then through that, we opened Madison Fasteners, which is an industrial supply company, but we mainly handle production fasteners. We're not taking the same business plan as some of the bigger players that want to stock everything under the sun and manage 80 or 90,000 SKUs. We're more interested in customers that are using repeat products day in and day out, and customers that are interested in a piece price savings or more geared towards piece prices as opposed to a total cost or total solutions. We can offer certain areas of that with those three businesses tied together. And the most fitting part for us is that our business started with injection molding, and injection molding is more of a high volume, high quantity industry. So those are the customers that are using 10,000 of a plastic part per month, and there's 10,000 screws that go with that plastic part.
Right.
So that's where we try and fit Madison Fasteners into. And we have customers that buy 30 pieces of two different parts a month as well. But our real niche and the majority of our business is tied to customers that want to buy the same thing week in and week out and buy it in large volumes.
And who are your customers? What's your market?
99% industrial, although we have a couple of retail store-friendly customers, like some companies that sell products to CVS or to Walgreens and even Walmart. But we do everything from kids' playground systems to rack cages to parts that go into the automotive market as well. Parts that go into automotive lifts, parts that go into parts that go into oil cans. But really, it's 90%, 99% industrial.
So you're fairly diversified, and you're operating really in the heartland of the country. And so the question of the day is, what are you seeing out there? What is the business climate like? We know that it's not ideal, but what is it like? What are you experiencing?
We're seeing an uptick in all three of our businesses. And our fastener business has really grown over the last, through this downturn, as folks have become more in tune with actual costs as opposed to ease of doing business. But seeing a small uptick, and it's really been a small uptick that's been evident for the past 4 to 5 months over all three of our businesses.
Okay.
There's a little fear that it's semi a false uptick.
Right. But it's we see it beginning about December in our own statistics. So I guess that's the same 4 months you're talking about.
And I don't. I guess it's tough to explain. It's not so much a different uptick, but we don't have a lot of new customers. It's a handful of new customers here and there. But really what you see is folks that were bled through all their inventories and were really down are starting to buy again and buying closer to previous levels as opposed to buying in drastically lower levels. So I think we're seeing some type of leveling out in a sense, that a lot of inventories are gone that folks sat on for a long time, and life is starting to get back to normal, just back to normal at a lower level than it was 3 years ago.
How do you see the comparison between, say, March of this year and March of last year?
What we've really seen from a sales standpoint, what I think we've seen is a lot of folks that have a little bit of time on their hands now. I think March of last year, and that's just a snapshot, but when this stuff really started going south, when the economy really took a nosedive, you saw a lot of companies that laid off and a lot of companies that streamlined some positions, and what you didn't have were purchasers or plant managers or those folks they didn't have the time to go out and shop or the time to sit down and evaluate different aspects of their business. They basically said, I spend the biggest chunk of my money on this, and that's where I'm going first, and the next biggest chunk of my money on this, and that's where I'm going to look next to save a few bucks.
Right.
After I've gotten rid of people, now that I don't have people anymore, I may or may not have time to really dig into those different chunks. So what we see today, in general, is folks are not hired or not staffed where they were staffed before, but staffed higher than they were last March, and have a little bit of time and a little bit of a growth area compared to evaluate some of those aspects of their business.
Okay. Well, that's a little better than, because the statistics from last year are fairly grim, actually. You're right about the difference between just the onset of getting rid of people and then realizing you don't have enough time to actually put into researching your supply, and now people do have time. It means much more careful purchasing.
Had we done that before, I think as a country, as an economy, we'd probably be in a little bit better state today. The first way I think folks want to eliminate dollars, and it's the biggest way to eliminate dollars in their expenses is through payroll. But I think we failed to understand that gray area of eliminating fat, but still allowing yourselves enough time to find other opportunities besides payroll.
We talked about the built-in diversification that Madison Fastener has with your three different divisions, your three different operating units. And could you talk a little bit about that, how that's kind of impacted the way that you're doing business right now, and if it's helped you, and just comment on that?
We have a lot of similar customers, or a lot of the same customers in those three businesses. So customer A that buys injection molded plastics from FAS Plastics, there's a good chance customer A still buys fasteners from Madison Fasteners. So as some companies go down, it affects all three businesses. But what we have done is to establish relationships with certain folks at certain companies that allow us to only have a part of their business. And obviously we're trying to grow as much business as possible. But if we can if we can have our hands on and supply plastics parts to a company, but not have fastener parts, when that company goes down, when that business slows down, we're really only hit in a third of the manner that a single company might be hit in. So it's allowed us to ease some of the slowdown and minimize the effect of it, and then it allows us to spread out and leverage some of our fixed costs, and most specifically payroll. If we have a week where Madison Fasteners has 1,000 things going on and need a couple extra trucks or need a couple extra folks packing orders, and that same week FAS Plastics is slow, we don't have guys for FAS Plastics that either have the week off of work, or we don't have guys that maybe don't work quite as fast because they know if they get their job done, there's nothing for them to do, and there's a chance they might be going home.
Well, there's definitely economies built into the operations side of it, but what about using one branch or another as a way to create loss leaders for yourself? Do you find yourself doing that?
We do it some, and I guess a specific example is a customer came to us that was buying some machine parts from us and said, "Hey, we're interested in some construction supplies," and we basically act as a sole supplier for a couple different job sites that these guys are doing, and we move everything from plywood and lumber to nails to visqueen to the gaskets that are machined and entered onto the pipe. So we don't do enough of some of those things to be very competitive at it and make margins that maybe some other folks are making. So if we're making a profit and have an established relationship with a customer from a machine shop standpoint, we can go out and buy lumber and sell lumber from the cheapest lumber yard here locally, not have much in it because of travel times and shipping costs because it's right next door to us,
right,
and add 5% to it. And now that 5% is about the same price that someone would have paid from the lumber yard right down the road, because we just made a couple of phone calls to evaluate prices. So we're not really making any money on that product, but we're ensuring we keep a customer happy and we provide a solution to that customer and a supply standpoint from being one phone call as opposed to 10 different phone calls for 10 different suppliers.
Well, there are all kinds of stories about guys doing all kinds of things to keep customers, to make sales, and so forth, and I was just curious about that. So it sounds like you're doing what you need to do as well. And again, with this built-in diversity that you have with your operations, I suppose that's just another tool that you have to keep competitive in this economy.
And we think so. We have a flexible enough business plan that allows us to be molded and stay true to our core values and our core goals. So we can achieve a couple of customer goals or a couple of extras through the process. It just gives us some more flexibility as far as different products, and one more reason for a customer to call us instead of another guy.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this: how did you first start to use Fasteners Clearinghouse, and how has it come in handy for you?
We get a lot of oddball requests, like every other fastener house in the nation, I'm sure. But just looking online for parts that after 6 or 7 or 8 years of doing this, I had no idea where to get, or I had called a manufacturer that I thought would have them and didn't. So you start to search online for different parts, and after seeing Fasteners Clearinghouse come up so many times, it's inevitable you start to click on it and start to get familiar with the website, and it's really been easy to use so far. And you just don't know what might be on the website next week. So it seems to me that there's always new products, and it's always being updated and added to. It just seems to be a constant growth.
That's true.
What governs your decision to buy from a particular, if you do a search, it's unlikely now you find only one single item on anything. I mean, there's usually multiple suppliers. What is one of the things that is, makes you decide which one you're going to buy? Is it really the closeness, someone you can call and speak to?
It's usually about ease of doing business. There are certain companies that you can drop an email to. You can click on their contact information, and they're going to get it, and they're going to respond very quickly. There's certain companies, you can pick up the phone, you can talk to someone right away. They're not going to put you on hold, or they're not going to call back to quote something, if at all possible. And then after that, you start getting into who has the most on hand, or are there big differences in quantities on hand, and also who's geographically the closest. Is obviously shipping costs continue to increase, and I think we're on a little upswing as far as that goes too. So probably a combination of those 3 to 4 things.
Oh, okay.
Well, thanks very much, Matt. I appreciate your input.
Well, glad to do it, and hope it all helped.
We've been talking with Matt Traylor of FAS Plastics and Madison Fastener. You can get in touch with Matt by visiting his website at www.madisonfastener.com, and he's operating in Hanover, Indiana. Thanks a lot, Matt. Appreciate it one more time. Coming up, Jay Mont. Stay with us.
The Midwest Fastener Association would like to congratulate all 11 recipients of this year's MWFA Scholarship Awards, which totaled $17,000. The MWFA is dedicated to education through our scholarship program, which has awarded over $300,000 since the program began, and through our ongoing education classes on fastener-related topics. This year, the MWFA marks its 64th year, making us the oldest association in the fastener industry, with members from coast to coast. We serve and promote the needs of the fastener industry and our members, and we invite you to participate. Please visit us at our website at www.mwfa.net. The Midwest Fastener Association, helping build the future of the fastener industry.
This is Rick Porter with Mid-Valley Distributors, the largest stocking distributor of fasteners in Central California. If we don't have it, weld it. You're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
We are joined now by Jay Mont of American Imperial. And everybody knows you, Jay, up and down the East Coast. We talk to everybody, and everybody knows you. Welcome to Fully Threaded.
Happy to be with you.
Jay, you operate American Imperial and also Discount Screws. What's the difference between those two operating units for you?
American Imperial, we've been around forever. We sell mainly other distributors across the country. And Discount Screw, we started that back in the late 70s, and that company basically handles OEM accounts all over the country, and then we took over Fasco Fastener, which was a newer shell. They were in business for like 52 years, and we took them over basically for their accounts, but they wanted us to take their inventory also, which, we took out of there about 20 trailers, didn't even make a dent. Bernie didn't want to scrap it, so we took their inventory in here also. With the inventory we have, whichever company it is, we generally just move it over and switch it out, sell it out of American Imperial because everybody knows us there. And,
right.
They get the best pricing that way. And I think some people are afraid to call us on the Fasco because they don't know us and they figure the price is going to be higher. But, we know what pricing we need to be at for the distributors. And we try our best to move inventory. Over the years, there's been so many changes, though. It's unbelievable. I mean, when I got in the business, I don't know. Well, I've been in business since I was 4 years old. I was taking nuts off, square nuts off square bolts.
Oh, so, goodness me.
Even back in the 40s, square bolts and square nuts were getting passé.
I was reading on your website that American Imperial, at least, has been selling for over 75 years. Is it a family operation, Jay?
Yeah, my father started it, God only knows when, most likely around early 1920s, mid-1920s. But he was more into the electronic business. Radios were first starting up, and he started buying surplus then, knobs and the grill cloths and pulleys and
right,
you name it, and then just accumulated a big inventory of fasteners. And then back in the 40s, he backed some people, financially that were starting up in the screw business, and then they bought him a factory, and then those two guys had a fight, and not with him, but with each other, and he wound up buying them out, and that's how we basically wound up, mainly in the screw but nut and bolt business. We don't have a factory anymore, but that he got rid of back in the early 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been in it basically all my life, except I left it for a short period of time to try another venture, and came back to the screw business.
It drew you back in.
Yeah, drew me back in. So,
right.
It's been a lot of changes over the year. Today everybody, like it's ISO 9000 or whatever it be, and, when I first got in the business, someone called up and wanted a round head. If you had a pan head or a binding head, they didn't care. They took it. I mean, today everything has to be just, perfect. And people don't know from switching, from rounds to pans or truss, all does the same job, but they don't, they basically don't switch like they used to. And, we actually now we're doing a lot of, sort of like almost cleaning up or sorting out or re-inventory in our warehouse. And we just find ourselves each night, we scrap some stuff that doesn't, which I know just doesn't fly today.
Okay, what sort of stuff then doesn't fly to you, in your experience?
I guess it was Thursday night we were working, we came across like a 3/8/16 by 7/8, I think it was, slotted round machine screw, and I just look at it. I mean, I don't have to get gauges. I've been around long enough. I just look at it and I see that slots on them just weren't, deep enough. Years ago, you got away with a shallow slot on a round head, especially a screw that big, because the head's like a mushroom already, on a 3/8/16. Mm-hmm. And I just looked at it. I knew I wouldn't sell that to anybody today's market. And to send something to somebody that's wrong, it just doesn't pay. It's going to go out UPS and back UPS.
Right.
You'll never get your money out anymore, so you might as well sell it right to begin with, and you won't get a return that way. Because once it's coming back, what are you going to do with it? If it's not right, it's just no point in selling it. I mean, if we have something sometimes that we know, like I have some 836 by a half-inch round heads. I bought them out of another screw company that, was well-known and went broke. I took out of there over £1 million. And these round heads run, IFI standards. If you have a half-inch, it's always tolerance is so many thousandths less, up to, maybe 10 thousandths less, 15 thousandths less, whatever it be. But these screws maybe are about 10 thousandths over. And those I haven't scrapped, because when someone wants an 836 by a half, it's not an everyday item. They can't call it hands.
It's an unusual.
And they're the big four guys, and buy it. So, they take it. And they're usually buying those in smaller, quantities, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 pieces. But, I tell them right off the bat that they're running like 10 thousandths longer, and they want them, fine. They don't want them, that's okay with me also.
Yep.
I always joke around, if it's in the winter, I say, let it just sit here. It keeps the rest of the fasteners warm for the winter, so I'll sit on it.
Right.
I mean, we're sitting on millions of pounds of inventory, so another box doesn't bother me.
What are you doing to manage that inventory, Jay? How do you run your warehouse operation?
Well, you wouldn't believe it, but we run our warehouse with one person. I mean, we push out a lot of material, but he doesn't want to help for whatever reason. I've offered to have extra people. He'd rather come in early, stay late, even if he has to come on a weekend. He has his own sort of methods and some ways that I don't particularly agree with. That's why I'm in the warehouse working with him every night now, trying to straighten it out a little bit. But fortunately, we have the dollars that if we get an order from somebody for, 500,000 screws, 600,000 screws at 100,000 a month or 50,000 a month, I just lay the entire quantity into place. First of all, I buy it cheaper. Second of all, I don't have 10 truck shipments or whatever number it takes. Each month there's stuff coming in. And he likes to just leave those pallets on the floor. And he lines them up, and every month, the first of the month, he goes and he grabs 5 cartons off, and we put the barcode label on, and out the door it goes. So, it is fast because he doesn't have to take it down off the racks and put it back up on the racks, but it gets to the point that sometimes then you can't get to the items that are behind it on the rack unless you stop moving it. So it has its pluses and minuses. But then once that customer might stop using that part, it's on the floor. So I just said to him the other day, I walked around, I counted 114 skids on the floor. That's more inventory than most people have in their whole warehouse. And I said, we got to get it up. And, at night we've been working, finding, space on the racks, and we're down to 80-something already. And, I only do it 1 or 2 nights a week. And another month or two, we'll get it up in the air. And while we're doing it, we're re-inventorying the other skids, right? And throwing out, as I say, stuff that I don't like the looks of it. Or
now, this whole operation is in Pomona, New York, that we're discussing?
Right, yeah. We have a 50,000 square foot warehouse here.
Right.
And we're palletized with, well over 1,000, pallets up in the air. And we have shelving that's 2 tiers, because we also inherited basically the inventory. Years ago, there was a fellow by the name of Mo Epstein was starting up a company called the Fastener Mall, and he built shelving because he was going to charge the people by the square inch, to inventory. He was doing like what you're doing, but he was going to actually hold the inventory in his place, and he was going to charge the people by the square inch. Or cubic inch, I should say, of the boxes, using uniform boxes. And unfortunately, after he poured a couple of $1 million into the business, he had health problems, and his family didn't want him to keep going because he had so much money invested. It was unfortunate because he was just turning the corner where he was starting to get to the point where he could put some stuff out the door instead of, and get money coming in instead of everything going out. Right. And he owed me a lot of money for rent, because that was part of the deal, and for X dollars. He just turned the inventory over and the shelving. So you have no idea how much we have in shelving, and this particular shelving is double-tiered to 16 feet high, with a mezzanine in the middle.
When was this, Jay?
He started that business, he was traveling to every show, including like China and England and, wherever they were, Germany, he went, and it was a shame because he got in here maybe only a couple of weeks before he went out of business. He got grade 5 cap screws by the trail loads, and he got socket cap screws, I think, out of Brazil. And he wound up just turning that over to, he'd call up like a Reynolds was in business at the time, someone like that, and he just sold out all his grade 5s. And he just paid us for the handling, to get them out. But he had already taken in a lot of surplus from some people. Larry Basner, he's not alive anymore, but at the time was. I guess he was friendly with him. That was New York Fastener, and he had trailer loads of stuff from him, and I inherited all of that material, basically, which, is good because all was QCP'd, and, most of my surplus stuff, even, I bought out of places like Western Electric and named companies, and, it was QCP'd before it got here.
Have you ever taken a look at the Hot Sheets page that we've been running on Fasteners Clearinghouse?
No.
It's a page that's set up to be a little bit like Craigslist, where people are just putting blowout lists of inventory. Like in the old days, you would type up a list of inventory that you just wanted to get out of the warehouse, and you'd put it at a blowout price.
You'd send it out.
You'd fax it to everyone in the Rolodex, basically. And what we tried to do is duplicate that online, and we did it because we had so many requests from people asking us to buy their junk, basically, and so we figured, hey, this will be a great service. I was curious if you'd ever taken a look at that, because the concept is really not taken off as I would have thought, and I was curious what...
I'll tell you what, as you bring it up, I did look at it one day, briefly. Bob here, he's the computer, the IT guy here, and he showed it to me. And this is a really crazy business. I'll tell you something. Just like I said, we'll just use that kept nut as an example. People in this business, you can offer them that kept nut for $1, $1,000. We know if you go to Heads, that kept nut is $3, $4, $4.50. It depends when they bought it, because right now the Chinese market is fluctuating so much. So, you can call one guy and it's $3.25. You call another one of, I call them the big four, like Stealthfast and Heads and XL and Porters. Another guy could be $4.40, $4.80. You never know. So, but you can put that kept note out for $1, $1,000, unless somebody has a customer for it, they will not buy it. I can't, and I've been in this business, I don't know, over 50 years. Right. But I've been in the business since I'm, I know about the business since I'm 4 years old. Places used to be open on a Saturday, so my father would take me into Manhattan. I go way back. I know all the old timers, and most of them aren't even alive anymore. But I mentioned companies people never heard of them. Vertex was before it was Bell, and before that it was Troy. So I know all these different people.
Now, you've been in this business, as you said, for a long time, Jay, and you were also one of our really early members, actually. In the early days when people were frightened to put stuff on the web. So do you see a change, even in the last few years, in people using the web to look for fasteners, as opposed to the old, what used to be just people you knew and you'd give them a call, I guess?
Well, I'm 72 now, but it's the new generation. They are, completely computer literate. I see with my grandchildren at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they come home from school and they got their nose in the computer. When I came home at 3 o'clock, I couldn't get back out to the ball field to play ball quick enough, and then you come in for dinner and I'd do the same thing and play ball until you couldn't see it anymore. And the people today, that generation, is just into the computer. And sometimes I think they lack social skills because they don't talk to anybody and they don't know how to handle, let's say adversities, because, they just don't have as much. They're in their computer all the time. They just don't have that personal contact. And more every day. In fact, I'm sure you can track it. I get more Fastener Clearinghouse, will say, hits than the week before, almost, it seems. And me, I don't love the computer, so now all of a sudden I'm looking on every 15 minutes or so. I sort of click over and, I got 12 more emails, of which, 8 are junk, and because of the name, you get all this spam crap.
Right.
But, I got hits from whether it be Fastener Clearinghouse or customers wanting a quote or checking stock. It's all together different. Look at billing. Billing is, most people now, including ourselves, we're sending invoices via fax for 8, 10, 12 cents an invoice rather than 44 cents for a stamp. Times change.
Yeah, it's changed.
Better, and some I think are worse, but what can I tell you? You see, when you talk to somebody, you could say, we have a zinc plate, or I have a zinc yellow, and I can make, I can send it down, or they want to know if it's zinc Rojas, and you try and tell them it's not, but, if you give me 2 days, I can have it zinc Rojas. When you're answering on the computers, everything is black and white. They want it just the way it is. We used to use machinery, too, and got to the point I got out of that after my father passed away. I stayed with it for a while because I loved the action, going to the auction sales, buying something for a machine for $500 and selling it for $5,000 2 days later. That was a lot of fun. But it got to the point people wanted the machine, they wanted me to sell a machine set up for their particular coil winding, whatever they wanted to do. We were selling coil winders. And then it got to the point, are they computerized? Are they this? Nobody wants to touch anything. Just come in the door and go out the other door. Do anything they want, just the way they want it. Which is fine by us. We're here to service people. So if they wanted black zinc, nickel, whatever. Hey, I have some screws in stock with every single plating. You know, the same size. Could be brass plated, nickel plated, black ox, zinc yellow. Yep. I mean, you know, over the years you build up an inventory with 1 million items and 1 million different platings and so forth and so on.
Yeah. Now, do you find that some of the, I mean, especially, I suppose, cadmium's gone out of favour. I mean, you don't see that much of cadmium around. It used to be that was a lot because they used it on cars and things, didn't they?
We still have cad, and, you know, it presents a problem. So a lot of times I send it out with other stuff and we get it zinced. But, I mean, today I got on your Fastener Clearinghouse a brass, one person, I couldn't believe it, a brass set screw. I mean, I don't think I saw a brass set screw once in 2-3 years.
Right.
And another stainless screw with either a nylock or I forgot what kind of locking. I think it was a nylock insert or a patch lock or something like that. It was fine. I mean, you get rid of junk like this. I love it.
Okay.
I mean, I get it sometimes on a Saturday or Sunday. I turn, you know, my BlackBerry, you know, phone. Same thing. I get people from Hawaii looking for something. If I know I have the item, believe it or not, I answer them on Saturday or Sunday.
Well,
New generation won't do it. They say I'm not working. You know, I'm not getting paid to work today, and they won't answer.
On the other hand, they're completely wired in, so they have the capability.
What's it cost me? It takes me 15 seconds to zoom it back, $4 100, whatever. You know, I sort of know pricing in my head.
Right. Well, you have to know the pricing. There's to do that, don't you?
And it's the fun of it. I say, hey, I joke around. I say, guess what? I just made $50 today. I just made $250, whatever it is.
Hey, Jay, I wanted to ask you, earlier you mentioned about the Big Four, and, of course, everybody knows who they are. Do you see any movement with that, or any change with that? Are there any other competitors that are kind of coming into the market that you're aware of?
Well, most people coming in today are basically specializing, I would say, in, you know, one item or another, or one kind of material or another, or right now, there isn't too much, I don't think, happening there because, first of all, the economy, from what I gather, nobody's moving material the way they were. Most people, their businesses are off, from what I gather from people talking to them. They admit to 30 to 70% off from previous year, you know, meaning last year, 2009, versus, we'll say, 2008. So, you know, there's not people really where they're getting the money and who they're going to sell the material to. They can try it, but I don't know how successful they'll be. You know, warehousing is expensive for us. I mean, we own our own building, so, you know, we're okay. We have no mortgages, so I can ride out whatever storm there may be. But, you know, for people to start up today, it's difficult. And the business isn't quite there. In fact, you know, we find our business, sometimes we do better in hard times like now than we do in good times. We lose on one end, but I pick up more distributor business when things are tougher because they may not want to buy a carton or they have more time to shop for an item. So we move more of surplus material, but we do less with the OEMs. You know, in this kind of economy, we were only off last year about 13%, so
that's not
everybody else. I mean, we had a successful year.
Yeah, we haven't. That's not our impression relative to just the figures that we see. I suppose the other thing is that with something like the web, people can find. You know, there was a time when they wouldn't know how to find if someone was looking for a special type of machine screw. Well, you would not really know how to even start. Now you just go to the Google or Bing or something and type it in and go from there to work out how you could find it somewhere close. And that's how a lot of people use Fasteners Clearinghouse too.
I can tell you one thing. You know, say we get an order for 10 items from OEM. You used to be able to call up like any one of what I call the Big Four, and well, it's really three, and the fourth guy sort of coming on a little stronger now. But you used to be able to call up, and most likely you get 8 or 10 of the items from one person. Now their inventory is almost all of them, for whatever reason, not there. It's just, you know, you got to. I mean, I called for a 10 split lock washer. All 4 heads, XL, Cellfast, Porteous. Not one of them had a stock on a 10 split lock washer thing pointed. I mean, now you don't have a 10 split, you might as well not be in business. That's like not having a 3/8 nut or a quarter. You have no head out, you have no length. What could be easier than a 10 split lock washer? Well, we got them coming in July, we got them coming in June, whatever it be. You figure it out. I mean, combination. Either they don't, I don't know whether the story is money-wise, or they don't want to tie up the money, or whatever it is. The inventories aren't there, so
yeah,
it's good for me. I get calls all day long now for an item I normally wouldn't sell.
Well, Jay, let's wrap up by getting your impression of what's happening in your particular region. What do you see in the Northeast in particular? We talk to folks all over the country, and in your neck of the woods, what's going on?
Well, in the Northeast, if it's construction, my construction customers are basically dead. Nothing happening. I have a couple of owner-builders, who do their own, build for themselves, for whatever they're putting up, whether it be apartments, warehouses, or whatever. A little action, not much, but I talk to people that do electrical work and concrete work, and I have tenants because I have a lot of acreage here, so I have tenants outside with bulldozers and backhoes and what have you, and they're just sitting here, and they're having trouble paying rent even for outdoor space. They get a job, they come in, they give me, they say, here's last month's rent, hopefully in 2 weeks I give you the rest. So the construction industry is really bad. The only construction work we're doing as far as selling is some government-type jobs.
We were told that the Northeast would be one of the areas that would begin to rebound quickest, and it doesn't seem to have been the case, actually, does it?
No, I'll tell you something. We had 2 months now back-to-back, but that's only because I picked up some big accounts, that give me a lot of business. Why I'm getting it, I have no idea, even the price and service or whatever. And maybe I didn't ask him for a deposit on a special part. And, I said to one guy, you're into me for $60,000 already in just like 45, 50 days. I don't even give my big accounts, those kind of credit terms. And he says, what's your bill? And, what's your oldest bill? And I said, $15,000. And he sent me a check 2 days later. So a lot of the stuff I do see to the pants, I sort of knew who he was from somewhere else. And, sometimes you get burnt and sometimes you don't.
Right.
But I got the account, and now, he's happy, and we keep going. But I can tell you the numbers, I'm just going to use a number. It has no bearing on how many invoices I do, but I'm just going to say, let's say we do it 100 invoices a day or a week, whatever number you want to use. It's maybe down to 60, but you're getting, I'm getting bigger ones from a lot of these people. And like I say, I'm doing more business now with some accounts than I ever did before because someone else cut them off, and so I keep shipping them. And it's working out for them. It's working out for me. And a lot of them have brought even though I'm doing more business, they've brought their receivables with me are lower now than they were before. But you got to have the capital to do that, and you got to be able to say, hey, if they stick me, is that okay? What can I tell you?
Well,
it's working for us. Let's put it that way.
Okay. And FCH is working for you too.
By and large, every week we're getting more than. And I'm not saying this because you're on the phone. I mean, you have the numbers. You can prove out what I'm saying. But
right.
Every week and every month we're getting more hits than the month before. And you want to know something? Sometimes when I see the 2 screws, if it's some loony size, like a 640 by 1 1/8, the guy tells me something, he has a clock that broke or something like that. You know what? I take the 2 screws, I put them in an envelope, and I mail it to him for nothing. He goes, you know why? The guy may know somebody. I say to him, I'm going to send it to you. Maybe you know somebody that makes an item that uses a lot of fasteners. Send them on to me.
Well, Jay, that's why guys know you all over the industry, and that's why you've been in business so long, and we sure do appreciate you being with FCH, using it, and we certainly enjoy talking with you, and we're glad that you were able to join us on Fully Threaded. Thanks very much.
My pleasure. Anytime you got a question, feel free to call me.
We've been talking with Jay Mont of American Imperial and Discount Screws. You can contact Jay through his website at www.discountscrews.com. He's operating near Pomona, New York. And Jay, thanks again for being with us.
All right, nice talking to you.
Okay, mate. Thank you.
FastenersClearinghouse.com. Search and source from over 500,000 line items, all just a mouse click away and available at no charge. When the need arises, you won't find a better place to locate hard-to-find fastener inventory. It's where you need to be.
This is Joe Truckee of Cal Fasteners, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for us.
This is Robert Wanzer, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for American Imperial.
This is Andy Pell from ScrewCrew.com, and FCH works for the fastener industry.
Join the sourcing network now and show your inventory to a whole new market. Turn slow movers into cash. List up to 10,000 line items. Show them to distributors only or to the world. FastenersClearinghouse.com. It's where you need to be.
This is Randy Lemaster with Tapco, and you're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
Brian and Eric, Fully Threaded. You know, I was thinking during the break, in the early days of FCH, I called Jay Mont so many times, and I'll tell you the honest truth, he just scared the hell out of me.
Well, Jay can seem a bit daunting. Underneath, it's a really nice guy.
Well, he's a tough businessman, and but he's a good businessman, I can tell, and he's a very, very good FCH user. A heck of a lot of good stories. I hope we can have him back.
Oh, yeah, and one of those stories is that I remember at the very first Las Vegas show that we went to, I had never met Jay Mont. Now, I knew Jay Mont as through the emails backwards and forwards when we loaded up all his inventory, and he turned up, and I was in my eager days of trying to sell people at the show, and I started trying to sell Jay a membership, and he reminded me that he already had one and was one of our first members, and certainly put me right in my place. He didn't mean to, but I was very embarrassed about that because I should have known who he was.
Well, hopefully we'll have him back one of these days, and he was a great guest to have.
Right.
I'll remind everyone that our email address, if you would like to communicate with us, is ftr@fullythreaded.com. Also, please check out our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/fullythreaded. Also, Fully Threaded Radio is now available through iTunes. You can download us and subscribe and listen to us on your MP3 player, and I hope folks will start taking advantage of that. It was really, really exciting the other day, Brian, when we were driving along listening to Fully Threaded on your iPhone.
Well, it just shows you really amazing where technology's gone, things that we hardly even notice.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true.
And in closing today, I notice a headline on the American Fastener Journal Online, and it's from Stanley Proto-Industrial Tools, and it's about the release of a new torque multiplier display wrench. Now, this is not your ordinary wrench, okay? This is not what you use to tighten up the head bolts on your car. This thing is for serious work, and as it looks like, a very, very impressive tool. There is a catch, however, and the catch is that you have to hand calculate the input torque multiplication factor.
Can you imagine, speaking of that problem that NASA was having that we were talking about earlier in the show, imagine doing that in a zero-gravity environment in a spacesuit.
Yeah, well, imagine floating down around upside down trying to set the thing and getting 1,000 instead of one. You know, one false move and you'd be the next man in the moon.
Well, episode 3, Fully Threaded Radio, is one for the books. For Brian Musker, this is Eric Dudas. Talk to you next time.